Hi guys, Lyra here. Today we are going to be talking about the book called Managing Oneself by Peter Druker. This is a very short, sweet work that is definitely worth your time in my opinion. So some of the main points that you will take away from this book are basically this book is about how to identify your unique strengths and gifts with like a career, life, work mindset framework, how your strengths would fit into this aspect of your life. The main premise is how are you going to position yourself in terms of your life work in order to give the greatest contribution or the greatest value. He goes into detail to answer that particular question for yourself. One of his key points in this book is that you can discover your strengths through a very effective method called feedback analysis, which basically means that you write down a particular intention that you have or a particular goal that you might have, and obviously work on that goal and set yourself an 18-month time span, 12 to 18 months, he says. And once this time span is up and you have actively worked on this intention or goal, see if your expectations actually match the reality, actually match the results. And based on the results, you can then discern whether or not you have a particular strength in whatever field or whatever you're looking at in terms of your strengths. Another thing he does is he sort of breaks down your skills into different categories. So he's like, how do you learn? Do you learn through writing? Do you learn through reading? Do you learn through doing? Or do you learn through talking? You really have to identify what your main mechanism of learning is, and you probably know what it is. Basically, how do you figure things out? And so you have to place yourself in a position where you can utilize the mechanism that you most resonate with. Another thing that he goes into is your performance. He calls it your performance. So there's different aspects of how you would perform. For example, do you work better with others or as an individual? Again, it's very important to know this because if you naturally work well alone, but you're placed in an environment where you always have to work with people, well, you're not going to be excelling as much as you potentially could. Then he goes on to talk about your values, and he says that if your core values do not match up with the expectations of your life work, then it will not work. Basically, if your heart is not into it, you're not going to be doing your best work. And he gives an example from his own life. He said that he was studying economics, I think, and he went to a lecture, and he was listening to a lecture about some kind of economic principles, and it was then at that lecture that he realized that all the people in the room were interested in economic principles, and he was actually interested in how people worked. Again, that is really important, right? Like that's sort of like matching your passion with your life work. Like, is your heart really into it? So yeah, you have to sort of evaluate your values in terms of your life work and see if they match up, because if they don't, it's definitely not a good thing. Then he gives, again, very clear instructions for goal setting. So he says an 18-month time span is the ideal amount of time. It's not too short and it's not too long. And then he goes on to talk about how it is important for you to not only understand yourself, but also the people you work with. It's really important to know how the people you work with operate in this framework, because if you're working with them and you know what their strengths are and you know what kind of a learner they are and how they perform, well, it's going to be that much easier for you and you're going to increase the productivity. So if you really want clear direction in terms of your life work and contributing the most, this is a really good book to refer to. It just gives very useful practical advice for putting yourself in a position where you can excel your most simply by knowing yourself and how you operate. Okay, so my conclusion, I think this book is really good. It's a very well written book. Peter Druker writes quite succinctly, like he doesn't give any fluff at all. It's very to the point, direct, and very elegantly written. Like, it's not dumbed down like I see a lot of nonfiction books that are, sometimes they're written really redundantly and you feel like they're marketing to like people with like a grade 2 reading level almost. This book is not like that. It just really gives you direction, which I like. And I really like how he emphasizes the principle of you putting yourself in a position where you contribute the most. Not where you can get the most out of life, but where you can be of service to others, because ultimately that is what leads to the most happiness. And yeah, so that is my thoughts on this book. I really liked it. I think the book is only like 58 pages. It took me half an hour to read. My daughter was in her little swimming lessons, and while she was swimming, I just read that book in half an hour. So quick read, gives you a lot of direction, and just great advice. Yeah, and I really recommend this book. All right, I'll see you next time, guys. Bye.